Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about a very serious subject. And I'm going to put a what type of warning do I want to put? An upset warning. Okay. I want to warn people that I think what I'm about to say is going to upset a significant number of people. In fact, most people. Okay, so let me try to explain what kind of people this is going to upset. If you're a grognard, this is going to upset you. If you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons in a traditional sense for any period of time, a year to 10 years, there's a decent possibility this will upset you. If you're a happy-go-lucky, carefree person, and if you've ever used the word whatever, this will upset you. If you like to avoid conflict, like if you're conflict averse, this will upset you. Okay. Now, should you watch it and be upset? No, absolutely not. Go with God. If you find that disturbing content upsets you, do not listen a minute longer. I'll stop here. Okay. There's plenty of great content right here on YouTube. Go watch a cat video. Okay. All right. Okay. I did want to give that warning. All right. Because I do think this is going to upset some people. Let's get into this. All right. So what I want to talk about today is what Dungeons and Dragons is for and what it can achieve and how we use Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. So first and foremost, I'm going to say it flat out. Oh yeah, one more thing. I always say that this at the end of every video. It's like nobody ever hears it, or no, some people do. A lot of people miss this at the end of my videos, or they ignored it, or they don't, or they either don't listen, or they ignore, or both. Okay, I'm going to say it here at the beginning. I'm going to say it at the end because I think it's really important. Every single word you're about to hear is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? That's all it is. All right, let's go. In my humble opinion, we did Dungeons and Dragons wrong for 50 years. Okay, all right. And how did we do that? Well, we thought it was for fun. We thought it was a game. I don't think it's a game. I don't think Gary designed Dungeons and Dragons. On February 7th, 1974, Gary Gygax released Dungeons and Dragons into the world. And I think he delivered it as a human improvement engine, and he called it a game so people would engage with it and use it. And I think he knew that later people would realize it was never a game, is not a game now, and never will be a game. I don't think Dungeons and Dragons is a game, right? I actually think it's the most powerful secular human improvement engine that's ever been created by humanity. I think it's a fundamentally new form of art, new form of literature, and it fundamentally changes every person who participates in Dungeons and Dragons begins to change fundamentally in how they process, in how they use their intellect, their emotion, and their spirituality. I think it's the most powerful secular transformative art literature element that has ever hit humanity. It is truly profound, right? All right. All right, here we go. I'm going to jump right in, okay? All right. You will hear from thousands of dungeon masters. You will hear from thousands of dragon masters. What's a dragon master? Other channels would call them Dungeons and Dragons players. I don't use that term because I think it's offensive. I call Dungeons and Dragons players Dragon Masters. So every time you hear a Dragon Master, any other channel would call them Dungeons and Dragons players. Okay. All right. So easily a thousand Dungeon Masters have said this phrase, and 1,000 Dragon Masters have said this phrase, and many Dungeons and Dragons designers, even recently, have used this phrase. If everybody's having fun, you're doing it right. I think that is fundamentally wrong, and I think it's the foundation stones of the tyranny of fun that ruled Dungeons and Dragons for 50 years that I intend, that I desperately wish, right, by sharing my opinion, to shatter. I think using Dungeons and Dragons for fun is wrong. Okay. So what do you mean, Scott? What do you mean? Why do you think using Dungeons and Dragons for fun is wrong? All right. Well, here's why. Okay. New York Times. When newspapers were a thing. I'm going to use the New York Times, but actually, okay, we're going to talk about Pulitzer Prize winning articles, and we're going to talk about the Garfield comic strip, okay? 2,600 newspapers in America published the Garfield comic strip, okay? So I'm gonna talk about it from the perspective of the New York Times. It could have been any of those 2,600 newspapers. Be the same, okay? All right, so let's get into it. So what would you think of a person who was like, if you walked up to a person and you said, hey, did you read the newspaper today? And they're like, yeah, boy, was it good. Did you see the lasagna joke that Garfield said? And you're like, yeah, I did. Did you see that Pulitzer Prize winning article on XYZ topic? And they're like, no, I didn't see that. And you're like, well, you just don't read that section of the paper? No, I don't read any of the sections of the paper. I get the paper, and all those pages, those are just wrapping for the Garfield comic strip, right? The purpose of the newspaper is to have fun. It's to laugh at lasagna jokes, correct? No, man. Like there's obituaries. What's an obituary? What's like where they talk about people who've died and like kind of memorialize their life. There's also informational articles, and there's sports articles, and there's movie reviews and book reviews and current events. There's lots of things in the newspaper. It's not just about the Garfield comic. What are you talking about? If you open the newspaper, you throw out all the other pages, you read the Garfield comic strip, and you laugh, you're doing it right. As long as everybody has fun, you're doing it right. You don't need those other pages. They're not for anything. That's ridiculous to read. That stuff is just wrapping. That's like, Christmas wrapping. You just throw it out. You're not supposed to read that junk. The purpose of the newspaper is to have fun. What are you wasting your time reading? What is a Pulitzer Prize? Why are you reading about sports and obituaries and current events? The purpose of the newspaper is to have fun. That's all it is. It's absurd. It's utterly ridiculous. A newspaper is a conveyance of information. Dungeons and Dragons is a conveyance of information. What information? The information about you at the table. The information about the player next to you, the Dragon Master next to you. The information about the Dungeon Master. You are to learn about yourself, your other Dragon Masters, and your Dungeon Master. It is a conveyance of information. And that information doesn't laugh at this. Are we all having fun? Are we all laughing? Oh, yeah. Right? It's absurd. It's utterly absurd to pursue fun when the engine was built to do so much more. So how do we smash the tyranny of fun that anchored Dungeons and Dragons and anchored every campaign and every session to accomplish nothing for 5 decades? Well, here we go. Okay. Listen carefully. This is Scott Garabay's opinion. Dungeons and Dragons is about experiencing aching melancholy. Dungeons and Dragons is about experiencing agonizing misery. Dungeons and Dragons is about experiencing intense suffering. Dungeons and Dragons is about experiencing the deepest possible sorrow. The deepest possible sorrow. Dungeons and Dragons is about melancholy, misery, suffering, and sorrow. Why? Because of the quest. Gary Gygax, from 1974 to 1986, created quests. He then personally handed over quest creation to Gloria Williams. I'm sorry, excuse me, Lorraine Williams. She did quest giving from 1986 to 1997. She handed quest giving over to Peter Atkinson from 1997 to 1999. Okay? It then went to Ryan Dancy. It then went to Robin Hainsue. And it then went to Christopher Perkins. Quest givers all. Okay? Now what's interesting is the quests were figurative that Gary gave from 1984 to 1986 if you weren't paying attention, right? That was the text. What was the subtext? Well, Gary Gygax quested each one of us. He did it on the cover of every single Dungeon magazine. And what did he say on the cover of Dungeon magazine? He said, mastering the dungeon and beyond. And today we have D&D Beyond, right? This idea of beyond. What is the beyond? Well, it's the actual quest. So you ate your pretzels and you chopped a goblin. You swilled your beer and you chopped a goblin. You wasted your time and everyone's time at the table for 5 decades. And the outcome was fun, right? Well, what was happening was everybody reading the Garfield page and everyone throwing out the sports, the obituary, the financial section, the entertainment section, the literary section, the current event section. And what I'm saying is that if you dedicate yourself to being at a table in the years to come where everyone at the table is experiencing aching melancholy, agonizing misery, intense suffering, and the deepest sorrow, you will have completed the quest that Gary actually laid out. And that is to find the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people who are in control of their intellect, their emotion, and their spirituality, and are ready to spelunk deep into the real dungeon, in my humble opinion, themselves and everyone at the table. And that through this experience, they will learn, grow, improve, and transform. It will be outrageously difficult. It will be outrageously difficult. It will be outrageously difficult to complete this quest. It will be so hard. No question. No question. Okay, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I'm saying this is going to be incredibly difficult. But if you arrive in the next few years at a table and everyone there is not chuckling, right, but is experiencing aching melancholy, agonizing misery, intense suffering, and the deepest sorrow, the people you will be with will be the most incredible people you will ever know, in my humble opinion. And you will have found more information about yourself and more information about those people at that table than is possible in any secular way ever. We spent 50 years completing figurative quests. It's now time to begin to think about the literal quests, to stop throwing away everything but the Garfield page. All right? If you've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for fun, if you've ever told anyone the purpose of Dungeons & Dragons was fun, if you ever told anyone the highest achievement with Dungeons & Dragons was fun, if you ever told anyone, if everyone's having fun, you're doing it right, you are a ridiculous, ignorant fool who has stopped people from reading the obituaries and reading the current events and reading the sports section and reading the finance section and reading the book reviews. You are a repugnant, ignorant fool. if you continue to tell people that the purpose of Dungeons and Dragons is fun. It is, at this point, with 50 years behind us, if you read the Lego Dungeons and Dragons instruction booklet, it's printed right there that already many D&D designers understand that far more can be accomplished. It's right there. It's written right in it, right? That even designers are openly talking now that D&D can do a lot more than fun. We have got to shatter the anchor on Dungeons & Dragons, which is fun. It is the most ridiculous, useless achievement of the most profound piece of secular art and secular literature conveyance that any human has ever brought forward. It's time to shatter the anchor of fun and allow D&D to move out into the oceans of actual possibility, of actual achievement. Dungeons and Dragons is about aching melancholy. Dungeons and Dragons is about agonizing misery. Dungeons and Dragons is about intense suffering. Dungeons and Dragons is about the deepest sorrow, because it can be. And when we reach it, and when we find a table where not everyone is laughing, but there are tears flowing down the face of the Dungeon Master, the Red Dragon Master, the White Dragon Master, the Blue Dragon Master, the Green Dragon Master, and the Black Dragon Master, when the D&D chromatic array is nothing but tears, then we have achieved the IRL quest that Gary actually set, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Absolutely not one thing more, and absolutely not one thing less. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.